Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've had a ton of listeners write in about information networks lately, like how they work and how they shape the world,
Mm.
and it's interesting stuff. So we're really diving into all of that today.
It's a big topic.
It is a huge topic. Luckily, we've got kind of a guide for this deep dive. We're going to be looking at historian Yuval Noah Harari's book, Nexus.
Great book.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Mm.
And he kicks it off with a story that I think perfectly captures this whole idea of information networks. It's about this World War I hero pigeon, Sherami.
Oh, yeah.
This bird supposedly saved an entire battalion by carrying a message through enemy fire. Pretty incredible stuff.
Amazing.
Right. But whether every detail of that story is actually true,
Right.
well, that's up for debate.
Sure.
And that's kind of Harari's point, right? It's not necessarily about whether the information is perfectly accurate.
Yeah.
It's more about the power of that information
Yeah.
to connect us and shape our realities.
Yeah.
Exactly, and you can see this throughout history. Look at religions, empires, even nations, these huge influential structures, right?
Yeah.
They're all built on these shared stories, these narratives. It could be something like the Exodus or national myths or even just like a shared enemy.
So it's like those stories are almost like the original information networks.
Precisely, and they create what Harari calls these intersubjective entities.
Okay.
Which sounds complicated.
It does.
But it basically means things that don't exist physically,
Right.
but hold power because enough people agree that they do.
Okay.
Like, think about it. There's no, like, tangible nation out there, right?
Right.
It's an idea that we bring to life by believing in these shared stories and symbols and values.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's like those shared narratives can be so powerful, whether it's a nation or a religion or even like a fandom online these days.
Oh, absolutely. And think about it from like an evolutionary perspective. This ability to unite around shared stories, this is actually what gave early humans a real advantage, right?
Okay.
It meant that they could cooperate in larger numbers,
Right.
which meant that they could outlast their rivals, right? Imagine that. The strength of your tribe is no longer limited by, like, who you personally know and trust.
Yeah.
It's like expanding that circle outwards.
So it's like stories were the original social media in a way,
There you go.
forming tribes around campfires long before hashtags. you know?
Exactly.
But as those tribes grew into empires, obviously they needed more than just stories.
Right.
They needed systems to manage it all.
Yeah.
And that's where Harari brings in this idea of bureaucracy.
Yes.
And he uses this great example from ancient Mesopotamia, this priestess named Naramtani.
Naramtani, yes.
Her story is really interesting because it kind of highlights this very human need, the need to access and retrieve information. She was desperately searching for these specific clay tablets to prove her inheritance.
Yeah.
And this whole system of bureaucracy with its meticulous lists and records,
Right, all these records.
emerged to solve this problem, to try to organize information and make it accessible and bring order to all the complexity,
Exactly.
So it's like bureaucracy, you could say, is like the original filing cabinet
Yeah,
in information networks.
I like that.
But we all know those filing cabinets can get a little overwhelming,
That's
a
true.
little messy sometimes.
Yeah.
So does Harari see like a downside to this need for order?
He does. He really does. Because he argues that while, we're aiming for order with these systems, bureaucracies can actually end up distorting our understanding of how the world actually works.
Yeah.
Think about it. Bureaucracies, they look to categorize everything, right?
Right, put it in a box.
Exactly. And Harari uses the example of like classifying different species, trying to put each one in a neat little box. But that ignores like the messy dynamic reality of how species actually change and evolve and interbreed with each other. He also points to the complexities of ancient Hindu purity laws,
Oh, right. I remember that from the book.
where even like professions and daily activities were ranked by their supposed level of purity.
It was like this whole ranking system, right?
It's fascinating, but also kind of disturbing when you think about it. Because these systems, while I'm sure they were well-intentioned,
Right.
they can miss those nuances of how the world actually works, right?
Yeah. And it makes me think about like present day concerns about algorithms
Oh, yeah.
that are potentially biased.
Absolutely.
Algorithms deciding who gets a loan, who sees what news,
Right.
all based on these classifications. It might be flawed.
It's a very astute connection. Because it's those rigid protocols, whether it's ancient purity laws or modern-day algorithms, they can have some serious unintended consequences.
Yeah.
They can perpetuate inequalities, limit our understanding, and sometimes even directly harm individuals.
Yeah. It's kind of a scary thought.
It is. And, this tendency to want to categorize and control information, this is not new. Harari argues that centralized networks like dictatorships, they thrive on this controlling of the narrative.
So they're almost like trying to create a bureaucracy of information itself.
Precisely. They limit access, they silence dissent, and they make sure that only their approved version of reality gets through.
It's like they're building a wall around information, right? Only letting in what they want.
Exactly. A kind of filter bubble on a societal scale, you could say.
And democracies, they're supposed to be different, right?
At their best, absolutely. Harari talks about how distributed networks, like democracies, when they're functioning well, they thrive on open access and the free flow of information.
More voices in the mix.
Exactly. More viewpoints, more potential for self-correction, when things go wrong.
Because someone's going to call you out on it, right?
Exactly. Whereas with that centralized system, it's all about maintaining that single narrative.
Yeah. Like that old saying, right? Whoever controls the information controls something like that.
Controls the world. Yeah, it's a powerful concept. And Harari illustrates this really well by contrasting ancient Athens, a society known for its vibrancy of debate. Citizens could directly participate in political discourse.
Right, everyone was in the public square arguing.
Exactly. And then he contrasts that with something like Stalinist Russia, where dissent was,
not tolerated.
To put it mildly, silenced, crushed. Any voice that challenged the official line was, well, you know what happened.
Yeah, not good. And that makes you think about, the role technology plays in all of this.
Yeah.
Because it can be used to centralize information.
Oh, absolutely.
But also to distribute it.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, think about the internet itself.
Okay.
Initially hailed as this great tool for democratization, right?
Right.
Bypass those traditional gatekeepers, everyone can have a voice.
Everyone's a publisher.
Exactly. And to a certain extent, it's been amazing for that, but it's also become this tool for, surveillance and control.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at China, right?
The Great Firewall.
The Great Firewall, exactly. I mean, that's a very stark example of how technology can be used to create this very centralized information network in the digital age.
Yes, like they built the walls even higher.
They did. They absolutely did.
But then you've got things like blockchain, encryption, these tools that are trying to push back against that.
Exactly. It's like we're in this constant tug of war.
We are.
Between those forces trying to control information and those who are trying to set it free.
It's exhausting.
It really is.
And then on top of all of that, you've got this whole other frontier, which is AI, which seems to be kind of rewriting the rules of the game altogether.
It really does.
I mean, it used to be the computers were just tools, right?
Right. They did what we told them to.
They were calculators, they were, word processors.
Right.
But now they're generating content, they're making decisions.
Yeah, they're writing poetry, they're composing music.
They're even mimicking human creativity in a way that it's a little unnerving, honestly.
It can be. And this is where Harari takes us from that familiar territory of those human-made information networks that we've been talking about into this uncharted water of what he calls the Silicon Curtain.
Okay, the Silicon Curtain, I like that.
Yeah. It really captures this idea that we're no longer dealing with just, humans controlling information.
Right.
It's that computers themselves are becoming active agents in shaping that information landscape.
So it's not just that they can process information faster than us, it's that they're starting to think for themselves in a way?
In a way, yeah. I mean, they're making connections, they're identifying patterns.
So what does that actually look like in the real world? Give me an example of the Silicon Curtain at work.
Okay. Imagine for a moment that you're scrolling through your favorite news feed online.
Okay, I do that every day.
Right. You see an article, it's got a headline that's like, perfectly tailored to your interests, written in a style that you find really engaging.
Sounds great so far.
Right. But here's the catch. That article wasn't written by a human journalist. It was generated by an AI.
Okay, so it's like, it knows what I want to read even better than I do.
Exactly. And it can deliver it in a way that's so compelling, so engaging, that you might not even question where it came from.
It's both fascinating and a little creepy.
It is. And this is something that Harari talks about quite a bit in the book, this idea that we might already be encountering AI-generated content.
Right.
Without even realizing it.
Without even knowing.
Exactly. And as these AI systems become even more sophisticated,
right,
it's going to become increasingly difficult to tell the difference between what's human-created and what's machine-created.
So how do we even know what's real anymore? Who do we trust? Who do we hold accountable when something goes wrong?
these are the big questions. And this is exactly why Harari argues that we need to start thinking about AI not just as this technological tool,
Right.
but as something that really fundamentally challenges our understanding of knowledge, of power, of reality itself.
So it's not just about, like, robots taking over the world. It's about algorithms quietly shaping our reality.
Exactly. And in a way, that's a much more subtle and potentially more insidious threat.
Because we don't even...
Exactly. It's happening under the surface. And Harari argues that we're on the verge of this potential power shift.
Okay.
Where humans could actually become a powerless minority within these information networks that we ourselves have created.
A powerless minority. So it's not just that we're overwhelmed by information, it's that we're governed by it.
That's a concern. We're governed by algorithms that we don't fully understand, that are making decisions that affect our lives in profound ways.
Like, we built these systems, right? But now they're kind of turning on us.
In a way, yeah. And the thing is, it's not some evil AI in a box somewhere.
Right.
It's that we've built these systems to optimize for certain things.
Right, like efficiency.
Engagement, profit.
Right.
And sometimes those things are at odds with what's best for us as humans, in terms of truth, fairness.
Right.
Those nuances.
Yeah, those things are hard to quantify.
Right, exactly.
So it's not about robots taking over the world, it's about algorithms quietly shaping our reality. And I gotta say, that's kind of a scarier thought, honestly.
It is. It's much more subtle.
It's insidious.
Yeah. And you know what? We're already seeing it play out in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at social media.
Exactly. I mean, look at how these algorithms can create these echo chambers. They can reinforce our biases.
It can influence elections.
Exactly.
It's a little terrifying, and that's just like the early stages, right?
And that's what's so concerning is that this is really just the beginning. So now imagine that same dynamic, but on a much larger scale, right?
Yeah.
With these AI systems influencing everything.
Everything.
From the news that we consume to the financial markets to, the very functioning of our governments.
Right, because those are all information networks, too.
Exactly.
It's not hard to see how this could lead to a future where human agency is, well...
diminished, to say the least.
To say the least. Okay, so this is a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah, it's not the most optimistic.
Yeah, does Harari offer any solutions, or are we just supposed to, like, accept our fate as these digital puppets?
He's not fatalistic about it. He doesn't advocate for just like giving up.
Okay, good.
He actually argues that it's more crucial than ever that we start to think critically about these things.
Okay.
That we question the information that we're encountering online, that we demand more transparency and accountability from the companies and the institutions that control these technologies.
But we had them on those things before, right?
We have, and we need to keep doing it. And he actually draws a really interesting parallel to, like, the regulations that we have for something like the financial system. Like, we have all these laws against counterfeiting money.
Right.
Because if everyone's just, printing their own money...
Right, the system collapses.
The whole system collapses, right. It undermines trust.
Right.
So his argument is, just as counterfeiting money can destabilize an economy, counterfeiting reality, which is essentially what we're talking about.
Whoa, that's a good way to put it.
With AI-generated misinformation, with these fake identities, with these manipulative algorithms, this can actually erode trust in our shared reality.
Yeah, because if you don't know what's real, then nothing is real.
Exactly. So what he argues for is a new kind of fiduciary duty.
Okay.
Not just for, individuals, but for the algorithms themselves.
To the algorithms. Okay, so like instead of tech companies just prioritizing profit,
exactly,
they would have an obligation to act in the best interests of their users.
Exactly. It's like, think about like a doctor or a lawyer. They have this fiduciary duty to their clients.
They have to do what's best for you.
They can't just, do whatever they want.
Right.
They have to operate within a certain ethical framework.
So it's like applying that same principle to algorithms.
Exactly. Which I realize it's a pretty radical idea.
It's a big ask.
It is a big ask.
Especially for these, giant tech companies.
Of course, they're making a lot of money from the current system. But he argues that, it starts with awareness.
Okay.
That individuals start demanding better from the companies, from the institutions that shape our information landscape. We can support regulations that protect our data privacy, that promote algorithmic transparency, that limit the use of AI for for harmful purposes. We can choose to support companies that are actually prioritizing ethical AI development over short-term profits.
Yeah.
And, we can try to foster this culture of critical thinking that values truth and authenticity over convenience and, just whatever's going to go viral.
Right. So it's about, like, taking back control of our information diets a little bit.
Exactly. Being conscious consumers of information.
It's not just going to happen automatically. We have to actually be intentional about it.
Exactly. And I think, what Harari really drives home is that this isn't just some abstract, futuristic threat.
Right.
This is about the choices that we're making right now, today, that are shaping that future.
Every day.
Every single day.
So our choices matter. Like, they actually have an impact on this.
They absolutely do, because the future of information, of these networks, it's not predetermined, right? It's being shaped by all of us in this moment.
We're all part of this giant information network, whether we realize it or not.
Exactly.
I love it. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been great.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Really enjoyed it.
We've journeyed from, ancient pigeons to algorithms, and I think everyone listening has probably learned a lot.
Me too.
And hopefully it's given everyone a lot to think about, because like we were just saying, our choices really do matter.
Absolutely.
So be thoughtful out there.
Yes.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.